Hey all, we're getting questions on the sway bar video and it's doing very well. Thank you very much. We're getting questions about how do we select them? How do you know when it's bad? We tried to answer that in the video, but one thing we didn't touch on is a sway bar that has too much friction. Any suspension component that has too much friction and causes friction outside the shock will make your car feel like the rebound is very, very slow. So you need to go through your components, make sure everything is free, watch the video. We give you a couple examples on a couple of cars, show you kind of what to do, what it should be like, what it shouldn't be like, and hope it helps. Thank you. All right, so here's a sway bar on the Porsche Cayenne project. I don't know how to say it. Some people say Porsche, some people say Porsche, and they're all very vehement that they're correct. So I'm just going to say it however I say it. Okay, but this is not about that. This is about sway bars. So I get asked all the time, what should I look for in the sway bar? What should I do? What's the do's and don'ts? Here's the biggest don't I see with any suspension component when you get out tuning. It's the thing that makes the most difference in how the car rides. So we're looking at a sway bar, pretty big tubular sway bar on the front of a Porsche Cayenne. This is Porsche Cayenne. This is a diesel, I believe. Yes, it is. Has a lift kit from, don't remember the name of the company. Right now it's got a strut so I can drive it in and out of the shop. But there's the sway bar. So this is what shouldn't happen. If you grab your sway bar and you have to hang on it with everything you have to get it to move, that's bad. That shouldn't be that way. It should move freely. Now this car in the actual ride area is not terrible, but if you look at those bushings, you can see they flex a little bit, and there's friction happening there. And when you have that friction in the suspension, a good buddy of mine, Tucker Conroy, told me today it's parasitic drag, which makes sense. That's really an aeronautics term, but it's a pretty good term. The parasitic drag in the suspension is a force outside the shock that we can't do anything with. And it causes the suspension, especially in rebound, since compression is a fairly hard event, lots of energy induced by the mass of the vehicle slamming into Mother Earth, which doesn't move, and the vehicle has to. So lots of energy developed there. But in rebound, we're only dealing with the amount of energy stored in the spring. And so if we add extra force to that energy, then we have to lighten rebound. It's way better to have your suspension be very free and handle the rebound event with the damping in the shock rather than frictional forces we can't deal with elsewhere. So hopefully that demonstrated what I was trying to very well, and we'll go from there. Okay, we're here at the DFR Race Prep Shop, and more on the sway bar. So you saw earlier on the Porsche Cayenne a sticky sway bar, and I'm just going to show you on the DFR 6100 truck, best riding truck I work on, by the way, and if you don't believe me, you should take a ride in it. Also, the only truck I know that has custom stainless steel pistons in the bump stops, and a bunch of other stuff that we've done. It's pretty good. So this is how a sway bar should act. When you take the radius rod out, you should be able to lift it and you should be able to swing it out of the way. It shouldn't wiggle. It shouldn't move freely. I mean, it shouldn't be loose as a goose, but it should move freely. This means that there's no force acting on the suspension outside the shock. It's wrong to say no force, but there's not undue force. So there has to be a little friction in all bushings and bearings, but this way we've had an instance where years ago I was testing with Randy Slauson in a bomber car. We couldn't figure it out. No matter what change I did, it just never changed, and we spent the whole day, and I basically told Randy, I don't know. A couple weeks later, he texted me and said, don't feel bad, we couldn't figure it out, and Oribe and I just took the sway bars off, and all of a sudden it got better. It got way better and it was loose, and then we had to start working on it, and it turned out the sway bars were sticky, the bushing. So it's a story Randy and I share with each other whenever we are out shock tuning. And then just at King of the Hammers, Tim with TMR, his car did the same thing, kind of just wouldn't respond to adjustments. Really just felt like a skateboard. It was bound up. It just was harsh and just skipping rather than the wheels, feeling the wheels move. We freed up both the front and rear sway bar. Night and day different car. A couple other incidents just this last week. Working with Chuck Dempsey on a car that was freshly prepped. Had some sway bar stiction, and it was a front, so we just left it off. Car got better. And I think there's one other. Oh, years ago I was working with Jason Shearer when I worked at Fox, and I couldn't figure out the back of his car, and then we found out that in one of the NorCal races he'd been hit going into a corner. I think Tom Ways had hit him and dented his sway bar tube in, so it was rubbing on the sway bar, and we had to cut that portion out with a cutoff saw or a cutoff wheel. And once we cut that portion out, the car moved. It was good. So that's the thing is, if you are making changes and it's not making a difference, and it just the car or truck feels bound up, start looking for stiction. It can happen in the sway bar. It can happen in tight heims. If the A-arms and or trailing arms are heat treated and then not post machined, and you still just use a 40-ton press and press the uniball in, it will collapse. And it will make friction, and that friction translates into the car. Doesn't make a lot of difference in compression, because compression is such a huge event. But in rebound, which is just the force of the spring, it makes a huge difference. So what you end up with is a packing car that never gets the wheel all the way out, and you're using a third of the travel. So there you go. Suspension. Make sure that your suspension is free. Make sure it's free and as free of friction as possible, and let's do all the damping with the shocks. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below. Do the typey thing. I like seeing those. I like answering them, and they give me ideas for the next video. Thanks all.